Hello YouTube, the Alpha Hunter has returned from a long time of learning. Mainly I was learning about sociology, mass communications, and all sorts of how all these things work. And so I've been distracted in my studies that I haven't quite been able to make a video since the last one. But I'm glad I'm here today, actually getting to do another video. And so today, I'm going to be talking about my criticisms of All Dogs Go to Heaven, the series. And spoiler alert, it ain't good. Now, for those of you who haven't watched either the series or the first two movies, I do recommend going and watching them first before I spoil a whole lot of it. I'll try to leave a link in the description box below for videos over the first two. If I'm lucky, there'd be movies over the first two that I can find online that y'all can watch. And I'll also link the series, well, the first season of the series in the description box below as well, so you can keep up along with me if you'd like. And now on to the first part, the intro, which you will be hearing a whole lot when you go through the series. Now for the introduction, you're presented at first with not only some scenes, but also good music. And I say good music because I really enjoyed how it is. It's faithful to the music of the whole franchise and the series. And I really do enjoy it. It's called A Little Heaven, and I do recommend you look it up. But it's a very catchy tune, and I memorized it, and I like it. And then also, as it goes through the cast in the beginning, I do believe most of the cast members are still the same. And the only one that worries me is the voice of Charles Barkins. And that's happened with the movies too. They changed his voice like twice, and this would be the second time. But the one thing I do have to be worried about is some of the characters and also the scenes themselves. One character in particular is named Killer. It's Carface's sidekick. Now, when you're going through the cast and through the scenes, the one that shows him and it says this guy as Killer, that is the only scene from the first episode of the series. Everything else is from the second movie. And like I said, I wish I paid attention to that, and that would have gave me an idea of what to expect. But I didn't really pay that much attention, and I suckered myself into this. So that's my problem and my view of the intro. Speaking of the series and the first episode, which is called The Doggone Truth, I've had several problems with this. And one of the first things I got concerned about was the fact that I heard itchy. Now, like I said, I'm spoiling some. So when I'm talking about this, I really love the second movie, so much so that it's in my top 3 favorite. So I know the lore pretty well. As far as I know from the ending of the second movie, when Charles was given his life back down on Earth to live it out and then he can return later, Itchy stayed behind in heaven because he could be able to move around more freely and more quickly, unhindered by his small legs. Charles said he would miss him, and that was actually one of the most touching scenes. So it really baffled me, and it really woke me up and surprised me to hear that Itchy is now in the series, and in the very first episode too. So that took me a little off guard, and I was, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And then of course, if you want to know if it's after the second movie, well, Charles makes a double chili cat burger with onions and pickles reference. He said that in the second movie. It's one of the crazy things. Charles can be a little bit of a joker. Now, we're presented with Killer. And at first I thought, why is a dog standing up in public where anybody can see him and cooking on a grill? That makes absolutely no sense to me, because as far as I know, dogs very rarely stand on their hind legs in plain public, even in the movie standards. And remember, this series is after the second movie, and I'll tell you how long later in the video. And so, when you're having to deal with that, it's a little bit immersion breaking and canon breaking entirely. So Charles and Itchy were supposed to defend a cat from an attack to protect it, and Charles got so busy trying to get a burger from Killer that the cat got attacked on his watch. What disturbed me the most a little bit was the fact that it kind of darkened, and Killer made reference that Charles is going to be in huge trouble with you-know-who. Meaning that Killer knows about Annabelle, knows about heaven, and it's like we're left in the middle of things, in medias res, a storytelling mechanic where you start off in the middle of the story, and then as the story continues, it explains things in the beginning. I mean, the Iliad did a good job, and all, but it doesn't quite work for this story as far as a fan would really like to consider. And so I have to think also, in the first movie, Killer was left in New Orleans, Louisiana, the little L-shaped state next to Texas. This series and the second movie takes place in San Francisco, California. Over half the country across westward. How did Killer make it that far? How? How did Killer make it there? That's one of the questions I've been bugging myself with and I've yet to find an answer. And also, Sasha. You do get to see Sasha after Charlie has a talk with Annabelle. And I'm going to have to do the whole Annabelle, Charles, and how all that's going on a little bit later so I can get a better explanation. But you see Sasha again, and I'm thinking here she's kicked out of a place she got by none other than Carface and Killer. That brings up a whole nother set of questions, and it brings so much more than answers. So first off, at the end of the second movie, Carface was taken by Red into hell. And Killer, as far as I know, and as far as many know, was still in New Orleans. Did it really take him a few days to get here? Really? I don't get it. I really don't get it. And so, they kick her out of a place that she owned. And that also brought up the question, why is Charlie and Sasha not at home with David? Because at the end of the second movie, you see Charles and Sasha walking into David's home. And you would assume that they're going to be there together, they're going to be pets, and they're going to be happy with the family. While Itchy's happy and Annabelle is at least satisfied that Charles is not causing problems. Okay. Taking a whole lot of breath for that one. So it really stunned me to see that both Charlie and Sasha were out on the streets and David was nowhere to be found. And also the fact that Itchy and Charles made reference to the flea bite. How did she find it? Or how did they find it? How did they manage to start up the business? What happened to cause them to get kicked out of the house on friendly terms? And I'll get back to that in a minute. And leave them out in the streets with no collar. That is something that I really can't handle. I started just kind of doubting what was going on because these things were not answered. And like I said, it's the first season. It's just stunning, okay? I get that it may get everybody talking, but you really don't want to have your series in a negative light. And so, yeah, that was mainly my problem with it. I also made a note that, let's see here, the humor's still about the same, so at least I can end this on a bit of a positive note. Charlie and Itchy, they do make occasional humorous jokes or references, and so I'm glad at least that's still continued on from the movies, and at least I can end this on a positive note. Episode 2, Field Trip. This is where I get to talk about what's going on with Charles, Itchy, and Annabelle. So after Charles failed to save the cat, Annabelle essentially pulled them back up into heaven and started talking about his assignments. And it was made more clearly in this film when talking about it. He said, "I have an assignment for you." What? If I remember correctly from the second movie's ending, Annabelle gave Charles life on Earth. And as far as I know, Annabelle was just happy to leave Charles as it is. To make sure he don't mess up on occasion. But my whole thing is, why is Annabelle seemingly going back on her promise? I don't get it. It's not making any sense. And the reason why I say going back on the promise is because that's what Annabelle gave to Charles. Life. Live your life. And then come back. It's not, oh, live your life and I'll send you some assignments your way and then we'll all be happy and all that. And I'm just... That's the part that kind of frustrates me a little bit, is this is what it's revolving around. For each series, there's either some sort of assignment or thing needing to be done. And it just doesn't make any sense to me when you think about it from the second movie. Anywho, I better move on before I start ranting for too long. In the third episode, called Lance the Wonder Pup, Charles makes note that he doesn't want to lose his job. Lose his job of being a savior when Annabelle gave him life on Earth. And I'm sitting here thinking, what if he gave it up? He still has his life to live. Why does that matter? Maybe it's good standing or something? I don't know. The series doesn't explain it as much to me either. Or at least within the first season. I watched through at least the first season and I just couldn't handle it. There was so much not answered. But also it does do a character contrast between Charlie and Lance. Lance is the more heroic, by-the-book, bold guy. Charles is the more cunning, more planning kind of guy. Sometimes he gets himself in trouble by being a bit too rash. And you can definitely see that. And it's just kind of stunning to me that Lance and Charles tend to headbutt. And Lance seems to be kind of pride-filled. Due to the fact that he likes to be standing up tall, noble, and all that. It just doesn't work. Especially when you get to see further in the episode that it starts not working. And it just, like... It really does help kind of characterize Charles. I do admit that that's a good way to kind of characterize Charles. It really brought it out to me that Lance was the bold by the book, let's go and do these things, and I'm just going to keep on doing it. Charles is the more planning and cunning and more thought out, though he tends to be a bit rash with how he does things. And so, it's really my criticism over the third episode. It just seems like it's a nice character contrast, and I think that's what it needed a little bit, but on a minor note. Episode 4, Puppy Sitter. Truth be told, originally I did watch it all the way through, and I remember parts, but in this one, after I saw what they started with the intro after the series introduction, what they did at the beginning of the episode, I just couldn't watch it any further. It brought up one of the biggest points that I've mentioned before. what happened to Charlie and Sasha. But more importantly, their relationship. What happened? So, in the beginning of the second movie, they're strangers, maybe acquaintances. Then they become a bit of friends and they start bonding a little bit more. And by the end of the movie, they're lovers. They want to be together. And that really was the most touching thing I've ever seen. And to see all of that character build up, all of it, and all of the bond they have, boom, gone. One episode. All of it's gone. And I forgot to make note of that when I was making the notes over the series and all the episodes, but Charles, he barely changed. It seems like this should have taken place somewhere in the middle of the second movie, but it's after. And that means if you're going to be consistent with the canon, that you have to continue on. Charles, while yes, at first being a little bit of a scamp and running around and causing a little bit of trouble, he was like that in the first movie, essentially throughout, and he matured a little bit. Second movie, he kind of started out like that. He just was excited that he got back, and, well, he's still being him. Being a little bit of a misfit and all that, but this time, when he was taking care of David and Sasha and Itchy, he matured. And one part about the second movie that really brought it out to me was the fact that he was willing to sacrifice heaven to save David. And so much so, he brought the horn all the way to Alcatraz, which was abandoned at the time, and traded the horn, Gabriel's horn, for David so they could escape. And as Sasha and Itchy got David, and they were about to row, Red brought heaven down. Brought all the dogs from heaven, even Annabelle. And it's during that scene that Charles really understands that he's not in a good position. He sees heaven falling down into Alcatraz, and then you can hear Annabelle screaming, "Charles, what have you done? What have you done?" And you can see the reflection of them falling from Charles' eyes. And you can see the dread and the regret in his eyes. He's matured, definitely. He's not a little misfit like he is now. He matured. Why? Why would they revert him back? He really matured. He was excited that he got life on Earth. And Sasha really wanted to be with him. Just as much as he wanted to be with her. But we go to this episode, and that's all gone. His maturity, his character, and the relationship with Sasha, gone. Gone with the wind. They're no more than just acquaintances now. It just doesn't make any sense. All that character development, all of that bonding, all to be thrown into the gutters and sent to the incinerator in one frickin' episode. And now to the final one that I'll be talking about. Episode 6, An Itch in Time. Now in this one, we get to see David again. And I was glad to see David because I thought finally we're going to be getting some answers. And it didn't really bring much. It just brought up the old questions. And like I said, I probably just didn't watch enough of the series to get a full idea of what was happening and what happened. But at this time, at least we got a little bit of an answer. So, in this episode, David's birthday is that day, and he turned 10 years old. Doesn't seem like much, right? But that actually kind of helps with where the series takes place. And a little bit of a time frame. When the second movie was released and we all got to watch it, David was 7 at the time. 7. And in the episode that I'm talking about now, An Itch in Time, he's 10. 3 whole years since Killer was still in New Orleans. Carface was sent to hell. Sasha and Charlie were lovers. Itchy was in heaven. Annabelle gave Charles life. And that Charles and Sasha were living with David and his parents as well as his newfound sibling. 3 years. What happened in 3 years? And the episode doesn't explain that at all. Just talks about him trying to have fun on his birthday with Charles and Itchy, and so on and so forth. It's more focused on his birthday rather than what needs to be there, a better explanation as to what happened. And that was a good time to try to reminisce about what happened in the 3 years. But no, they decided to just continue on about helping David have fun. And I don't remember at all David asking about Sasha. You're essentially raised and taken care of by that dog, and 3 years later, you don't even bother to ask about her. What is happening? You can see this is just still baffling to me, and I don't even think I can continue further into the series. Like I said, my main problem with it is just it doesn't follow canon. And that's what many people have said that was the problem. And that it's not canon due to the fact that there's several problems with it. Especially since it's trying to go from the second movie, which set up some clear distinctions, at least by the end. So having all these characters come back from wherever they came from, having the characters in such a relationship that they have, and in such a time frame, I don't mind that, like, the first 2 or 3 episodes be about, okay, what's going on here, because I think that's generally what people can get used to. But when you have essentially the first season like that, it doesn't make any sense as to why they barely even explained anything. And that is the main reason why I don't like All Dogs Go to Heaven, the series. Too much canon breaking, not enough detail, and just downright disrespect to the second movie at least. And like I said, I've only watched through the first season. And so there could be more answers out there. And I'll link anything that I find in the description box below about further answers. But I don't think we're going to have them. And so, like I said, I'm probably not going to be watching any further of the series. And I just wanted to let y'all know about it. I do recommend the first 2 movies. And I hope that you all enjoy the video. And of course, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to, and leave me a note about what you want me to talk about, or maybe we can start off a conversation. See how far it goes. And as always, good hunting. Always come out smiling in the